Hello, and welcome back to the history of Gallifrey. In today's entry to the series, we'll be going over the Doctor's era. Now, this is heavily condensed, particularly when it comes to the Doctor's early life. Though I do try to cover as much as possible in this series, we must remember that this is the history of Gallifrey, not the Doctor. And while he is a Time Lord, a lot of his life was not actually spent on Gallifrey, and even the years that he did spend on his homeworld are incredibly detailed and convoluted as they are detailed, so I will try and cover as much as possible without making this video longer than it needs to be. But without further ado, let's begin. When the Doctor was very young, Ulysses, who was potentially the Doctor's father, or a future incarnation of his, was told by Lana, a Time Lady from the future, that the fate of Gallifrey was mixed with that of the Doctor, and that he would have a part to play in its downfall and resurrection. After the Time Lords developed a chemical that could turn vertebrate blood into acid, the Doctor successfully campaigned for it to be banned, using his position as a councillor. He also convinced the Time Lords to put aside their non-interference policy and ban miniscopes from the universal market. Madrigor became the youngest Gallifreyan to be appointed a Time Lord. He began secretly using his TARDIS to steal from other planets. The other Time Lords discovered his thievery, and he was tried and found guilty. Before he could be punished, however, he fled from Gallifrey and hid on Lunagov III. According to one account, near the end of the Doctor's time on Gallifrey, the Master led a student revolt against the President Pundat III. They wanted to restore Rassilon's law by replacing Pundat with a descendant of Rassilon and stop a dynasty from forming. After Pundat died from stress, the rebels found the last living relative of Rassilon, a 7-year-old Time Lady named Larn. The students attempted a coup, but were stopped by Citadel guards. During the coup, the Master managed to assassinate the new president, Slarn. Shortly afterwards, both the Doctor and the Master left Gallifrey, with Lady Larn stowing away on the Doctor's TARDIS. According to another account, the Doctor and Susan left Gallifrey during a major conflict. Fearing that one of the sides would get the hand of Omega, the pair stole a TARDIS and took the hand far away from Gallifrey. Other accounts indicate that the Doctor and Susan did not leave Gallifrey during or shortly after a major conflict. These events are constantly changing. It seems that the Doctor's early life is one particular point in time that could be described as unstable. Although the second Doctor tried to avoid the Time Lords during his travels, he was forced to contact his people when he encountered a situation too difficult to sort out on his own. The Renegade war chief had allied himself with the warlords to collect soldiers from various points in Earth's history to create an army to conquer the universe. The Time Lords came and erased the warlords from time, and returned all the soldiers and the Doctor's companions to their native times and places. The Doctor was put on trial for stealing his TARDIS and sentenced to forced regeneration, and exiled to Earth in the late 20th century. The Doctor's sentence was postponed by the CIA, so he could perform several missions for them. His sentence of exile was later enforced, however he escaped before they could change his appearance, and hid at the Carlton Grange Hotel. The Time Lords used animated scarecrows to lure him and force his regeneration, placing him aboard his TARDIS, which took him to 20th century Earth, where he joined UNIT as their scientific advisor. The CIA later discovered that the second Doctor had created a paradox shortly before encountering the Warlords, during a visit to London in 1688. They sent an agent to meet with Jamie McCrimmon near the end of his life. The agent restored Jamie's memories and had him tell the story of his first visit to 1688. The Doctor, Jamie and Zoe, had met King James II shortly before the Glorious Revolution. Jamie had created an alternate timeline by encouraging the king not to flee England. In the new timeline, the Doctor never met Jamie, and therefore nobody encouraged him to stay in England. The agent stabilised the timelines while the Doctor fixed history in the past. The agent then removed Jamie's memories of the Doctor at his request and left. The exiled Doctor contacted the Time Lords for assistance in stopping the Mims' invasion of Earth. A messenger met him and informed the Doctor that the Time Lords would deal with the invasion, but wouldn't interfere with events on the ground. The Doctor's exile had unforeseen consequences. His presence on Earth changed history when he inspired Liz Shaw to create renewable energy using alien technology. After she left the Doctor, Liz began working with the United Nations to create 21 sun trap stations across the planet. Helios, last of the Solarians, was attracted to Earth by the stations and took control of its governments. After trapping the Doctor, he shaped the population of Earth into the perfect army for revenge on the Time Lords, who destroyed his home planet of Quababa. Using the technology from the Doctor's TARDIS, Helios' battle fleet came to Gallifrey and burst the transduction barrier with plasma beams. The High Council hid from the attack in a fallout shelter and traced the invaders back to Earth. Realizing their mistake, they sent the Third Doctor on a mission to his future to murder Helios before he could attack Gallifrey. The Doctor was successful, and the Time Lords took him back to his native time with evidence of the potential future. He showed this evidence to Liz Shaw and set history back onto the correct course by convincing her to become a writer instead. Furious that their planet was almost destroyed by Time Lord meddling, the CIA redirected the revolution against the clergy. Several cardinals were executed, and the Supreme Pontiff of Time was paraded around the Citadel on a pikestaff. Due to the Doctor's skill in saving Gallifrey, the CIA decided to continue giving him missions. To ensure that the Doctor was kept busy between missions, they released the Master from Sharda, and a messenger was sent to inform the Doctor that the Master was coming to Earth. In year 8592.5 of the Rassilon era, the Master stole information on the Doomsday weapon from the Matrix. After he went to Euxarius to get the weapon, the Time Lords temporarily fixed the Doctor's TARDIS to stop him. He succeeded, and destroyed the weapon before it could be used. The Time Lords then arranged the Doctor's trip to Peladon, where he and Joe Grant prevented schemes to stop the planet from joining the Galactic Federation. After the Amulet of Wastelands was lost in Earth's history, the Conclave of Grails and Antiquities recruited the Doctor to retrieve it before it could be used to rewrite Earth's timeline. The Doctor found it in 1943, and prevented it from being used by occultist Nazis. Leaving the amulet in the care of an LCS wing commander, the Doctor informed the Time Lord messenger that they would have to do without it. The Time Lords were easily rendered helpless when a force of antimatter began to drain energy from Gallifrey. They were forced to rely on the Doctor, with the President authorizing the allying of him with his previous 2 incarnations. The Doctors discovered that Omega was responsible, and were taken to the antimatter universe he had resided in since his betrayal by Rassilon. The trio discovered that Omega's physical form was now non-existent. His antimatter suit was now held together by sheer willpower alone. They defeated him and put an end to his energy drain. After discovering the Master's role in the Daleks' Operation Divide and Conquer, the Doctor contacted the Time Lords. They piloted his TARDIS to Spearhead, where he prevented the Daleks from awakening an army of 10,000. The Time Lords continued to give the Doctor missions after his 3rd regeneration. Whilst he was travelling with Sarah Jane Smith, the Time Lords took control of his TARDIS and brought the 2 of them to several points in history. First, they were taken to the planet Urkos, where they stopped the Daleks from drilling into the planet's core and turning it into a missile to fire at Earth. The Time Lords then directed them to Station 251, a Bendrigan space dock which had been infected with a virus deadly to them. The entire race would have landed on the space station and died, but the Doctor made contact with the leading ship and saved the species. The Time Lords brought the Doctor and Sarah Jane to the Italian village of Borrasini in the summer of 1944. There they helped the villagers take back an entire shipment of artwork stolen by the Nazis. The Doctor brought the art into his TARDIS and returned it after the war ended. Finally, the Time Lords diverted the Doctor to Karn, where he aided the Sisterhood in stopping the decline of their sacred flame, and prevented the resurrection of Morbius by Solon. The CIA came to regard the Doctor as their most talented agent. When he was nearly killed on Beta Osiris, a Time Lord interfered with the events and inadvertently saved the Doctor's life. The 4th Doctor was once brought before the Convocation of Oblivion, chaired by the Zero Nun, to explain his actions. In response, he told them of his encounter with the Scratchman. The Time Lords faced what was described as the most dangerous crisis in their long history, when, during the President's resignation, he was assassinated by Chancellor Goth before he could name a successor. Goth was planning with the Decayed Master to frame the 4th Doctor and take power uncontested. The Doctor was able to run against Goth in the election by using an old Gallifreyan law to give himself time to investigate the plot. He succeeded in unravelling the scheme, but in the process, the Master killed Goth. The Master gained access to the Eye of Harmony after taking the sash of Rassilon from the President's corpse, and attempted to open it, causing an earthquake. Though the Doctor stopped him, half of the capital was destroyed. With Goth dead, the Doctor was the only candidate left, so won by default. However, he did not want the responsibility, and so left in his TARDIS. With both of the other candidates unexpectedly withdrawn from the race, Greyjan the Sane, a Time Lord academic who never seriously intended to become president, was left in charge. His presidency lasted for only 3 years before he killed himself, distressed by visions of an upcoming war. With the capital severely damaged, Overseer Luther designed a grand reconstruction of the city. The watchtower was built on top of the ruins of the Panopticon. It was secretly a huge TARDIS that got its power directly from the Eye of Harmony, which Luther planned to eventually use to take over Gallifrey. When the Fourth Doctor returned to Gallifrey, he found the planet without a president, and led by Lord Chancellor Barusa. Claiming his right to the presidency from the old election, he briefly became the 407th Lord President as part of a plot to defeat a Vardan invasion, which he achieved by allowing them to materialize fully on Gallifrey so their home planet could be traced and placed in a time loop. This invasion was a front for a Sontaran invasion of Gallifrey. Although defeated, these invasions exposed a weakness in Gallifrey's defences. Following this, Barusa was officially made acting president. Gallifrey was again invaded, this time by the Dominators, who flooded the capital with quarks. 29 of them were destroyed by Leela and K9 Mark I. Though the Fifth Doctor would claim that there was never any serious risk of Gallifrey being conquered, one of the quarks was fitted with a bomb which heavily damaged the capital, necessitating the construction of a replacement building. The killer cats of Gin-Seng rose up against the Time Lords in the Crisis of Gin-Seng, which was stopped by the Fourth Doctor. The CIA erased all records of this incident, and the cats later evacuated the planet in fear of the future Time War. Barusa was later officially inducted as the Lord President of Gallifrey, and dealt with Omega's attempted incursion into N-space via the Arc of Infinity. Omega utilized the Fifth Doctor's biodata extract to do so. To prevent his incursion, Barusa ordered the Doctor's termination. However, Hedon ensured his survival. The Doctor dealt with Omega himself. Afterwards, the Time Lords sent the Doctor to investigate another manifestation of Omega in the sector of Forgotten Souls. Sometime later, one of the Rassilon-worshipping monkish covens, the cult of Rassilon the Vampire, got a hold of a sample of genetic material of the Great Vampire. One member of the cult consumed it, turning himself into a fully fledged vampire, and began a killing spree. When the body of a Time Lord victim was found hanging from the gantries above the Panopticon, Cardinal Hamal decided to summon the Fifth Doctor back to Gallifrey with a distress signal. While he and Nyssa investigated, the vampire found his way into the Doctor's TARDIS, where he infected Tegan Javanger. However, after returning to the ship, the Doctor and Nyssa were able to trick the vampire into stepping out into direct sunlight on Earth, destroying him and freeing Tegan. Once again, a group of Gallifreyans began pushing to make the President of Gallifrey a descendant of Rassilon. The Treemass Master decided to use this movement to become the next president. He kidnapped Lady Larn, the last descendant of Rassilon, and allied himself with the Cybermen. He was going to gain the support of the rebels with Larn and use the Cybermen as his personal army, but the Fifth Doctor stopped him before he got to Gallifrey. Following another regeneration, Barusa began to investigate the legacy of Rassilon, specifically his immortality. Barusa sought to be the President Eternal, ruling Gallifrey forever. Utilizing the Time Scoop, he summoned 4 of the Doctor's incarnations to the Death Zone, using them to gain access to the Tomb of Rassilon. Ultimately, Barusa did gain the immortality he sought, but with the drawback that he was now entombed as a living statue on Rassilon's sarcophagus. Following the close of the crisis induced by Barusa, the full High Council used its emergency powers and made the Doctor president on Gallifrey. He departed quickly, giving Chancellor Flavia full deputy powers until his return, which he didn't really intend to do. Due to the bungled succession, Flavia stepped down as Chancellor and Verena took over. After he crossed the frontier in time, the Doctor was recalled to Gallifrey to fulfill his duties as the President, whilst his current companion Tegan became Ambassador to Earth. Guided by Castellan Lowry and Leela, he announced a plan to end the Academy's monopoly on awarding Time Lord status and fulfilled presidential duties, such as the diplomatic mission, which was complicated by the Doctor's past with the other party. The Doctor faced protests on a visit to the Academy, and had to intervene to stop Scandrius, a student inspired by him, causing a paradox when he stole a TARDIS. The Doctor's final presidential duty was opening the new Capitol building. After they began to encounter dimensional anomalies whilst touring the building, Verena confessed the building was actually a giant TARDIS. She and her political allies had infiltrated the project to give the Doctor this power, so he could put right the evils across the cosmos. The Doctor refused her offer and escaped the malfunctioning TARDIS, which dematerialized with Verena on board. The Doctor gifted the relics of Rassilon to Lowry, handing the presidency to her. and then departed with Tegan in his TARDIS once more. Whilst acting president, Laurie sent Leela to recruit the Doctor to stop Abby and Zara, whose powers were threatening time and space. Flavia eventually became acting president. She became aware of murmurings that the High Council wanted to make its own choice for president, as she had not been properly elected. She offered herself for re-election to resolve this, unexpectedly losing to Nirok. His rise had been brought about by the CIA, who wanted a more easily controllable president. Flavia returned to the High Council, which Nirok began to fill with sycophants. After years of planning their revenge, the natives of Exklon created a spacecraft strong enough to destroy the Time Lords. Using a gravity controller, they brought the Sixth Doctor's TARDIS to Exklon. They planned to use the Time Lords' trust of the Doctor against them by saying that they had formed a peace treaty with the Doctor. While testing the spacecraft, it accidentally caved in where the Doctor was being kept. He managed to escape before he could be used against the Time Lords, and the natives of Exklon were all killed when their caves collapsed. A Time Lord on the High Council intervened to stop the Doctor altering the Vipod Moor's journey into the past, as it would be vital to the Big Bang. An ambassador, Anzor, was sent to Magnus after the natives petitioned the Time Lords for aid in their conflict. The High Council detected violent temporal disturbances on Marinus, caused by a world shaper. They sent an agent to investigate, but he was attacked by the Vord. The Sixth Doctor, Perry Brown, and Frobisher followed a distress signal from his TARDIS to Marinus and found his corpse. They then left the planet, picked up Jamie McCrimmon, and returned. Jamie sacrificed his life to destroy the World Shaper, and time stabilized. A group of Time Lords then came to the planet to clean up the World Shaper technology and prevent the Doctor from interfering with Cyberman history. After the Sleepers stole secrets from the Matrix, the High Council decided to physically move Earth in order to contain their escape. The Earth was dragged across 2 light years. Most of the humans remaining on the world were wiped out. Those that survived degenerated into a primitive tribal culture, and the planet became known as Ravalox. The Doctor later stumbled upon Ravalox and the L3 robot guarding the Sleepers' secrets. After this, and his meddling in the CIA's attempt to destroy the Nestine consciousness, the High Council decided to deal with the Doctor by putting him on trial. They made a deal with the Valiard for him to prosecute and adjust the evidence in return for the Doctor's remaining regenerations. The Doctor was summoned from Thoros Beta to Space Station Zenobia, where he was tried, with Inquisitor Darkel overseeing proceedings. The Valiard presented his case, with the Doctor's recent actions on Ravalox and Thoros Beta, which revealed that the Time Lords had extracted the Doctor moments before he could save his companion Perry. The Doctor decided to use evidence from his future as his defense. However, it had been altered. He was unable to prove this, but was saved by the Master, who revealed the fallibility of the Matrix by speaking from within it. He provided witnesses to prove the Doctor's version of events, exposed the High Council's actions, and the Valiard's true identity. The Valiard fled into the Matrix, with the Doctor pursuing him and stopping his plans to assassinate the court. Whilst he dealt with the Valiard, the Eighth Doctor and a temporal duplicate of the Sixth Doctor forced Nirok to begin a presidential inquiry. The Master's revelations, meanwhile, caused a revolution on Gallifrey, so the Eighth Doctor made a deal with Rassilon for Barusa's temporary release in a saner incarnation to oversee the situation. Barusa convened the Council of Administration, which officially deposed the corrupt High Council and ruled during the following interregnum. In the ensuing political chaos, 5 iterations of Perry were created as various factions modified her fate to suit their beliefs. These versions of Perry all coexisted in the same timeline. During this period, a magnetron was used to return Ravalox to its original location, the Valiard was put on trial, Zenobia was decommissioned, and Regan became coordinator of the CIA, overseeing a project on Earth to transplant TARDIS minds into human bodies, which the Seventh Doctor put an end to. The interregnum came to an end with new elections, which returned Flavia to the presidency, after which Barusa returned to Rassilon. During Flavia's presidency, the Committee of 3 brought Agonal to Gallifrey to fight Rassilon and free Barusa. Having redeemed himself with Rassilon, Barusa refused to go with them, and worked with the Seventh Doctor and Romana to defeat Agonal by linking their minds. In the aftermath, Romana decided to remain on Gallifrey. Immediately afterwards, vampire cultist Ruath used the time scoop to seek the vampire messiah Yavin, and targeted the Fifth Doctor. Romana was then invited to join the High Council at the same time. By the Rassilonian year 10,639.5, centuries after the capital was redesigned by Overseer Luther, the Doctor was thought by some to be a myth. Elucidator Riggy wrote the book Doctor Who, In Search of the Old Times Fraud. This group was surprised when a wounded 8th Doctor was brought to Gallifrey by the higher evolutionaries, with Faye Truscott-Sade and Izzy Sinclair. As the Doctor recovered, Luther decided that it was the perfect time to initiate his plan to rewrite Gallifrey's history. The final chapter assembled in the Watchtower over the Old Panopticon, draining the power directly from the Eye of Harmony. The final chapter journeyed to Year Zero. The Doctor, Faye, Izzy, and Shade managed to get inside before it dematerialized. As the tower left Gallifrey, it tore apart the entire capital. In the past, Shade pretended to be the Doctor and jumped into the Watchtower's time column. He then redirected the Watchtower back to the now ruined present Gallifrey. And that is the story of the Doctor's era, spanning from his first incarnation all the way to his 7th, and bridging slightly into his 8th. Surprisingly, his incarnations here are not too muddled, though that's primarily down to time on Gallifrey being the same as within his TARDIS, as per the first law of time. As we go on, it will primarily be the 7th and 8th Doctors as the Time Wars approach. In the next entry, we will be continuing through the Doctor's era, but at a more stable time, with Romana as the President of Gallifrey, so stay tuned for that. If you did enjoy this video, then consider leaving a like and subscribing down below, as it really does help out the channel. And if you want to put your thoughts down in the comments, please do. I read all of them and respond to as many as possible. But, as always, thanks for watching.